Darling, we're only thinking of your well-being. The board has decided that it's in the best interest of the company to appoint Daniel as interim CEO, just until you've had some time to recover. My mother's words hung in the air, dripping with false concern. I sat there, stunned, as the boardroom around me blurred into a haze of mahogany and muted whispers. The family portrait on the far wall seemed to mock me. My father's kind eyes now, nothing more than a painful reminder of what I'd lost. Recover? I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. From what exactly? Daniel, my younger brother, cleared his throat. He had the audacity to look concerned. Eve, we're worried about you. The stress of running the company, especially after Dad's passing, it's clearly taken its toll. I looked around the room, searching for a friendly face, an ally. But all I saw were averted gazes and tight-lipped nods of agreement. These people, whom I'd worked alongside for years, were now complicit in my downfall. This is ridiculous, I said, my voice gaining strength. I've dedicated my life to this company. I'm more than capable. Eve, please, my mother interrupted, her manicured hand resting on my arm. We have documentation, concerns from employees. It's for the best, really. As the reality of the situation sank in, a cold fury began to build within me. This wasn't concern. This was a coup. You planned this, I said, my eyes locking with Daniel's. For a moment I saw a flicker of guilt cross his face before it was replaced by a mask of determination. It's already been decided, Eve, he said firmly. The papers have been signed. It's done. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. You'll regret this, I said, my voice low and dangerous. All of you. As I stormed out of the boardroom, I could hear my mother calling after me, her voice syrupy sweet. Darling, don't be dramatic. Take some time off. Relax. Everything will be fine. Little did they know, their betrayal had just set in motion a chain of events that would shake our family and our empire to its very core. The days following my ousting passed in a blur of rage and disbelief. I retreated to my penthouse, ignoring the incessant ringing of my phone and the flood of messages from so-called friends and colleagues. The business world was abuzz with speculation about my mental breakdown and sudden departure from the company. Every news channel seemed to be dissecting my supposed instability. Sources close to the Lancaster family claim. One anchor began, and I hurled my remote at the TV, silencing her mid-sentence. I paced my living room, my mind racing. How could this have happened? I'd worked tirelessly, sacrificed everything for the company. And for what? To be tossed aside like yesterday's newspaper? But as the initial shock wore off, my legal training kicked in. Something wasn't adding up. The speed at which they'd moved, the perfectly prepared documentation, this had been in the works for a while. I needed to understand what I was up against. I reached for my laptop, determined to dig deeper into the company's recent activities. But as soon as I tried to log in, I was met with an error message. Access denied. Of course. They'd locked me out of the system. I leaned back in my chair, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd silenced me, but they'd forgotten one crucial fact. I was Evelyn Lancaster. I didn't break. I didn't give up. I got even. As I stared out at the New York skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars, a plan began to form in my mind. It would take time. It would require patience and cunning, but I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. And I would make them pay for their betrayal. Game on, I whispered to the empty room. The prodigal daughter wasn't going quietly into the night. She was about to show them exactly what she was capable of. Weeks passed, and to the outside world, it might have seemed like I had accepted my fate. I made a few carefully orchestrated public appearances, looking appropriately disheveled and distraught. I let the paparazzi catch me stumbling out of a bar, sunglasses hiding my clear, calculating eyes. But behind closed doors, I was working tirelessly. My years as a corporate attorney hadn't just taught me how to navigate boardrooms, they'd taught me how to investigate, how to find the cracks in even the most polished facades. Late one night, as I pored over financial reports I'd managed to salvage before being locked out of the system, I noticed a discrepancy. A series of transactions that didn't quite fit. At first I thought it was a simple accounting error, but as I dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Millions of dollars, siphoned off through a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. And at the center of it all, Daniel, my little brother, the golden child, had been embezzling from our family's company for years. As the pieces fell into place, I felt a mixture of vindication and disgust. This wasn't just about power, it was about covering up a massive fraud. But I needed proof. Concrete, irrefutable evidence that would stand up in court and in the court of public opinion. For weeks, I worked tirelessly, calling in favors from old law school friends, hiring discreet private investigators, and piecing together the puzzle. And slowly but surely, I built my case. Emails, bank statements, witness testimonies from lower-level employees who'd been unwittingly involved in the scheme. It was all there. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. An email chain between Daniel and our mother, discussing the plan to oust me. They had known about the embezzlement. They had orchestrated my removal not out of concern, but out of fear that I would discover the truth. As I sat in my dimly lit home office, staring at the mountain of evidence before me, I realized I had a choice to make. I could go public now, expose them immediately, and watch our family's legacy crumble in real time. Or I could wait, plan, strike when they least expected it. A slow smile spread across my face as I made my decision. They thought they'd broken me, but they had no idea what was coming. The game was just beginning. To disappear when the whole world is watching you is no small feat. But then again, I've never been one to shy away from a challenge. The first step was to give them what they wanted. A broken, defeated Eve Lancaster. I made a few more public appearances, each one more unstable than the last. I let rumors of substance abuse and mental breakdowns swirl around me like a protective cloak. And then, I vanished. To the world, it looked like I had retreated to lick my wounds. In reality, I was setting the stage for my comeback. I reached out to an old friend from law school, Sarah Chen, who had made a name for herself in Silicon Valley. I need to disappear. I told her over a secure line, but I also need to be able to move money, lots of it. Sarah didn't ask questions. That's why I trusted her. Within days, I had a new identity, complete with bank accounts and a digital footprint that would stand up to scrutiny. From a nondescript apartment in a city where no one knew the name Lancaster, I began to execute my plan. Step 1. Regain financial control. Using the skills I'd honed over years of corporate law, I began to quietly buy back shares of our company through a labyrinth of shell corporations and anonymous investors. It was slow work, requiring patience and precision. But with each passing week, my stake grew. Step 2. Build new alliances. Under my new identity, I reached out to our biggest competitors. I have information that could change the landscape of the luxury hotel industry, I told them. But I'm not interested in mere information sharing. I want a partnership. It was a risky move, but I knew the players in this game. They were sharks, always looking for the next big opportunity. And I was offering them a chance to take a bite out of the mighty Lancaster empire. As I worked, I kept tabs on Daniel and my mother. From afar, I watched as they basked in their apparent victory. Daniel gave interviews about his vision for the company's future. My mother hosted lavish parties, playing the role of the supportive matriarch. Their arrogance was their weakness. They thought they were untouchable. Months passed. My hair grew longer. My skin tanned from days spent in front of computer screens, orchestrating my return. To an outsider, I might have looked like any other young professional working remotely. They'd never guess I was the disgraced heiress of a hotel empire, plotting her revenge. There were moments of doubt, of course. Late nights when the weight of what I was attempting felt overwhelming. But then, I'd remember the look on Daniel's face in that boardroom, the false concern in my mother's voice, and my resolve would harden. They had taken everything from me. My company, my reputation, my family. I was going to take everything from them. And as I watched the pieces of my plan fall into place, I allowed myself a small smile. The prodigal daughter was about to return, and she was bringing heck with her. As the months turned into a year, my plan evolved from a spark of revenge into a carefully orchestrated symphony of retribution. Every move, every decision was calculated to bring me closer to my goal. My partnership with our biggest competitor, let's call them Summit Luxury, was proving fruitful. They were eager to gain an edge over Lancaster Holdings, and my insider knowledge was invaluable. But I wasn't just handing over information. I was positioning myself as an indispensable asset. Your hotels are good, I told the CEO of Summit during one of our clandestine meetings. But with my expertise, we could make them great, unbeatable. He raised an eyebrow. And what exactly are you proposing, Miss Evans? I said, using my alias. Emma Evans, and I'm proposing a merger. But not yet. First, we need to weaken Lancaster Holdings, make them vulnerable. Over the next few months, I guided Summit in a series of strategic moves. We poached key employees, outbid them on prime real estate, and launched marketing campaigns that hit Lancaster Holdings where it hurt. All the while, I continued to buy up shares through my network of shell companies. It was a delicate balance. I needed to gain control without raising suspicion. But the most crucial part of my plan was yet to come. I had been biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, it arrived. Lancaster Holdings announced a major acquisition, a chain of boutique hotels that would significantly expand their portfolio. It was a bold move, one that Daniel was undoubtedly proud of. It was also their vulnerability. Through my sources, I knew that the acquisition was stretching their finances thin. They were overextending, confident in their ability to absorb the new properties. It was time to set the final stage. I reached out to an old colleague, a financial journalist known for his hard-hitting exposés. I have a story for you, I said, one that will shake the foundations of the luxury hotel industry. As I hung up the phone, I felt a surge of adrenaline. After all this time in the shadows, I was about to step back into the light. I looked at myself in the mirror. Gone was the polished, boardroom-ready Eve Lancaster. In her place stood a woman hardened by betrayal, sharpened by determination. My hair was longer, my eyes held a steely glint, and there was a set to my jaw that spoke of unshakable resolve. Time to come home, I whispered to my reflection. I booked a flight back to New York, my heart pounding with anticipation. In my briefcase were documents that would bring an empire to its knees. In my mind was a plan honed to perfection. Daniel, Mother, the board, they all thought the war was over. They had no idea that the real battle was about to begin. The Lancaster Holdings annual gala, always a spectacle of wealth and power, but this year held a special significance. It was to be the crowning moment of Daniel's tenure as CEO, a celebration of the company's expansion and his leadership. Little did they know, it would be the stage for their downfall. I stood outside the Grand Hotel, my heart racing but my exterior calm. My appearance had been carefully crafted, designer dress, impeccable makeup, hair styled to perfection. I looked every inch the Lancaster heiress I was born to be. As I walked through the doors, I felt the room pause. Conversations stuttered to a halt. Glasses froze midway to lips. For a moment, it was as if the whole world held its breath. Then the whispers started. Is that? It can't be. Eve Lancaster? I moved through the crowd with practiced ease, nodding politely but making my way steadily towards the main ballroom. I could see security speaking urgently into their earpieces. No doubt, Daniel and my mother were being informed of my unexpected arrival. As I entered the ballroom, I locked eyes with Daniel. He was on the stage mid-speech, and the sight of me caused him to stumble over his words. Eve, he said, his voice echoing through the microphone. What an unexpected surprise. I smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world, little brother. My mother appeared at my elbow, her grip on my arm tight enough to bruise. Darling. She hissed. What do you think you're doing? I turned to her, keeping my voice low but my tone icy. I'm taking back what's mine, Mother. I suggest you brace yourself. Before she could respond, I strode towards the stage. Daniel, to his credit, tried to maintain his composure. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice only slightly strained, my sister, Eve. Let's give her a warm welcome, shall we? The applause was hesitant, confused. I took the microphone from Daniel's hand, our eyes meeting in a silent battle of wills. Thank you, Daniel, I said smoothly. It's been far too long since I've addressed this esteemed group, and I must say I've missed it. I turned to face the crowd, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon me. I'm sure you're all wondering why I'm here. After all, the story you've been told is that I suffered a breakdown, that I was unfit to lead, that I needed time to recover. I paused, letting the tension build. But stories, as we know, aren't always true. Sometimes they're carefully crafted lies designed to hide ugly truths. With that, I nodded to a technician I had stationed earlier. The large screens around the ballroom flickered to life. What you're about to see, I continued, is the real story. A story of embezzlement, fraud, and betrayal at the highest levels of Lancaster Holdings. As financial records, emails, and damaging evidence began to scroll across the screens, the room erupted into chaos. I could hear gasps, shouts of disbelief, the frantic whispers of board members trying to distance themselves from the unfolding scandal. Daniel lunged for me, trying to grab the microphone, but I sidestepped him easily. "You see," I said, my voice cutting through the din, "while I was away, I didn't just recover. I investigated. And what I found was shocking, even to me." I locked eyes with my mother, who stood frozen at the edge of the stage. My own family, conspiring to remove me because I was getting too close to uncovering their crimes. Millions siphoned from company accounts, fraudulent reports to hide the theft. Security was moving towards the stage now, but they hesitated, unsure of who they should be protecting. I held up a hand, silencing the room. But that's not all. While Daniel and our mother were busy trying to erase me, I was busy too. Buying back shares, forming new alliances. And as of this morning, I am once again the majority shareholder of Lancaster Holdings. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to Daniel, who stood pale and shaking beside me. "You're fired, little brother. And as for you, mother," I said, finding her stunned face in the crowd, "I suggest you enjoy this party. It's the last one you'll be hosting for a very long time." As if on cue, the doors burst open, and a team of federal agents streamed in. "Daniel Lancaster," the lead agent announced, "you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement." As they led my brother away in handcuffs, as my mother collapsed into a chair, as the room descended into utter pandemonium, I stood on the stage, surveying the chaos I had unleashed. The prodigal daughter hadn't just returned. She had conquered. The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, press conferences, and corporate restructuring. The business world was in shock. The Lancaster name splashed across every financial news outlet and gossip column alike. Daniel, facing overwhelming evidence, had little choice but to plead guilty. The sight of him in a courtroom, stripped of his designer suits and bravado, should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, certainly, but also a deep, aching sadness for what our family had become. Mother fled the country before charges could be filed against her. Last I heard, she was living in a non-extradition country, her access to the family fortune cut off. The woman who had prided herself on her social standing was now a pariah, alone in her self-imposed exile. As for me, I was back where I belonged, at the helm of Lancaster Holdings. But the company I returned to was not the one I had left. The scandal had shaken us to our core, our stock price plummeting, our reputation in tatters. The road to recovery would be long and challenging. But then again, I had always thrived on challenges. My first act as reinstated CEO was to call a company-wide meeting. As I stood before the assembled employees, many of whom had been complicit in my ousting, whether knowingly or not, I took a deep breath. "We've been through a storm," I began, my voice steady. "And I won't pretend that the waters ahead are calm. We have a long journey before us, one that will require hard work, dedication, and above all, integrity." I looked out at the sea of faces, some anxious, some hopeful, all uncertain. "Those of you who participated in the fraud will be dealt with. Those of you who suspected something was wrong but stayed silent. This is your chance to step forward. We will be conducting a thorough internal investigation. And I promise you, honesty now will be looked upon far more favorably than deception, discovered later." There was a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. I pressed on. "But for those of you who are ready to be part of the solution, who are committed to rebuilding this company into something we can all be proud of, I welcome you. The Lancaster name has been synonymous with luxury and excellence for generations. It's time we remember what that truly means." As I left the stage, I could feel the weight of expectation on my shoulders. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Over the following months, we worked tirelessly to right the ship. Transparency became our new watchword. We brought in external auditors, overhauled our financial systems, and implemented stringent new checks and balances. It wasn't easy. We lost clients. We had to sell off assets. There were late nights and heated arguments and moments when it all felt impossible. But slowly, steadily, we began to turn things around. I reached out to Summit Luxury, the company I had partnered with during my exile. "I know we talked about a merger," I told their CEO. "But I have a different proposition now. A partnership. One that could revolutionize the industry." He was skeptical at first, but as I laid out my vision, a new approach to luxury hospitality, one that combined our strengths and addressed the changing needs of modern travelers. I could see the excitement growing in his eyes. We announced the partnership 6 months after the gala. The business world was stunned. 2 former rivals joining forces? It was unprecedented. But it worked. Our stock began to climb. Clients who had abandoned us came back, intrigued by our new direction. We even started attracting a younger demographic, drawn to our commitment to sustainable luxury and innovative guest experiences. Through it all, I never forgot the lessons of the past year. I remained vigilant, always on guard against complacency or corruption. I instituted a company-wide ethics training program and made sure every employee, from the board members to the housekeeping staff, understood that integrity was non-negotiable. There were still challenges, of course. Rebuilding trust takes time. There were skeptics who believed the Lancaster name was irreparably tarnished. But with each successful quarter, each positive review, each new property opening, we proved them wrong. A year after the gala that had changed everything, I stood in my office, looking out over the city. The view was the same as it had always been, but I was not. The Eve Lancaster who had been blindsided in a boardroom was gone. In her place stood a woman tempered by betrayal, strengthened by adversity, and ultimately victorious. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah, my old friend who had helped me disappear, and now served as my CFO. "Board meeting in 10. Quarterly results are in. You're gonna like them." I smiled, slipping my phone back into my pocket. There would be more challenges ahead, of course. The business world was never short on those. But I was ready for them. 5 years have passed since that fateful night at the gala. Lancaster Holdings has not only recovered but thrived. We're now recognized as industry leaders, not just in luxury hospitality, but in ethical business practices. Daniel was released from prison last year. I received a letter from him, full of apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I haven't responded. Perhaps one day I will, but for now the wound is still too fresh. Mother remains in exile. Sometimes late at night I find myself staring at her number in my phone. But I never call. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. As for me, I'm still here, at the helm of the company I fought so hard to reclaim. But I'm not the same woman I was when this all began. I'm stronger, yes, but also more compassionate. I've learned that true power comes not from domination, but from empowerment of yourself and those around you. I've started a mentorship program for young women in business, teaching them the lessons I learned the hard way. Trust your instincts, I tell them. Never let anyone make you doubt your worth. And remember, resilience is your greatest asset. Today, as I prepare for yet another board meeting, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I see my father's eyes looking back at me, and for a moment, I can almost hear his voice. "You've done well, Evelyn. You've done well." I straighten my shoulders and open the door. The prodigal daughter didn't just return. She rose, stronger than ever before, and her story? It's far from over. As I stride down the hallway, my heels clicking against the marble floor, I allow myself a small smile. The future stretches out before me, full of possibilities, and I, Evelyn Lancaster, am ready for whatever it may bring. After all, I've learned that life's greatest challenges often lead to its greatest triumphs. And I am living proof of that.